Greetings, this is Duke Violation, otherwise known as Joe. Through the conversation, I might be called Violation or Joe, back and forth even. And with me, I have our tech lord Atos, or otherwise known as Chris Spears. And
Greedy.
he probably needs no introduction, but he's the guy behind the wall of text that decides how everything works in Shroud of the Avatar. So, Chris, how you doing today?
Doing great. I think most people know me as the guy they love to hate because I make all the changes that upset people. But hopefully people realize that all those changes that are being made are just to make the game more balanced, which will make it more fun in the long run, even if it does mean some temporary pain.
So
I'm doing great.
So when you say balanced, you're meaning that you put in a new dev weapon and you need to make it a little stronger, so you make everything else a little weaker, or are we talking about balanced? You take away from the top 1% and give it to the bottom 90%.
Usually it's the take away from the top 1% and
Oh,
give it.
okay.
But actually, I think players, I've talked about this before, but I watch a lot of metrics. We log a lot of things, and I'll go through and see what the top players, kind of looking at the bell curve and seeing where people are and see who's blowing the curve is, you might say, either on experience or just stuff they're killing, gold earning, artifact drops, whatever it is. See who's blowing the curve and then go see what they're actually doing. Usually I just look at their data to see what they're doing, but occasionally I'll jump in game and spy on them, but not too often.
So I've noticed that when you jump in game and spy on, it seems like there's a little bit of a hesitation to my frame rate. Is that because they're loading all of your amazing armor that is on your character, or is that just something that shouldn't necessarily be mentioned?
Sadly, right now, GMs actually cause a little more of a hitch because we have some extra special sauce on our character packages. So yeah, we probably ought to fix that. There's some other things that I won't mention that players have found ways to tell exactly when a dev is in zone with them, but I'll keep those secret. I think enough of those already.
I'll just go little ting ting ting, and yeah, we won't. So, yeah, I guess take it away. We have a couple things we want to talk about. This is the first one, so I'll give a brief mention to anybody that might be watching already. The idea behind this is to catalog almost like a video cast or a podcast and give a lot of technical information about Shroud of the Avatar. On top of the technical information, a lot of people don't get a chance to have kind of a back and forth from a player perspective. So I'm going to sit here and go, hang on a second sometimes, but for the most part, it's just about conversing back and forth with what's going on in the game. More than what we see. It's about how it actually works in the background and what the truth of the numbers are. And then the things that might be a little frustrating that you go, wait a second, that just stinks. Like, for example, I don't know, why did you take all of my bags out of my chests and throw them in the bank? Well, there's a reason behind that, because now, if you notice, lots load a heck of a lot faster, and things work just a little bit better. So some of the math changes, and some of those conversations happen, and we get some of those answers, and this guy basically knows all of them. So the idea behind this is to catalog all those answers, let people watch them, and we're going to start off with jumping in. We've got a couple different topics today.
One more thing I want to throw out there just before people start yelling. I have never turned down somebody asking me to do a live interview or do an interview video stream or whatever. I just want to throw that out in case people thought this was some like playing favorites and I only talked to Duke Violation or somebody. But I have never turned down one of these things. I've talked to 4 or 5 different groups. I know Wolftim did an interview with me and a few other people, but this is not a playing favorites thing. This is if anybody wants to ask me, I'm always available. So
I actually, to mention that, it's really funny. I was just talking to Lazarus Long from NBNN yesterday, and he mentioned that he wanted to do a stream with you, and he asked you, and you said okay. And then he said, okay, when can we do it? And you said, pick the time. And then he never got back to you. So he's like, I guess that's my fault. I guess I should have followed up with him. So anyway, yeah. So I guess if you want to just jump right in, first thing we have up to talk about is why you keep making it harder and harder for us to get everything to where just nothing ever drops. Like, I feel like all I get is nothing. I mean, I'm sorry, wait, the loot math.
So yes, I mean, this is one of the things I think players know that we had for a long time. We didn't really have any drops that felt aspirational. They didn't feel cool or awesome because there was a lot of drops and stuff like that, but it really was 100% crafting. And we never really promised we were going to do 100% crafted items were going to be the only things dropped. What we promised was that the crafted items would always be the best general items in the game. So we continue to try to make sure that we're getting, keeping the ratio right for how much effort there is to drop things. Last release was really kind of the first time we put in some really rare drop items with the artifacts that I created. And this release, we kind of expanded on it. No exaggeration, I keep a screen up on my computer at all times that shows me every single artifact drop in the game, with sorted by the username, location, and the zone, and what the artifact was, so they can keep an eye on that stuff and try to make sure it's dropping at a rate that we feel is meaningful. Because we want it enough so you hear about it occasionally, but we don't want it so like, oh, it's another one of those things, and it quits being so meaningful. You know, we want these things to be like, I got one, it's exciting. You know, again, kind of the aspirational type part of it.
So we need to focus on trying to farm those when you sleep, is what you're saying.
I still see them. Just not until the next morning, but I think players are well aware that I've gone and nerfed. I prefer to call it balancing, but players will call it nerfed some of the most optimal ways of farming things, and continue to do so, although not fast enough for some people's expectations. Yes, I'm looking at you, Umuri.
So, I guess while we're talking about loot math here, the idea behind what you guys choose to nerf and why, I guess you're saying you like to call it balancing. So you let some things go. You decide to get rid of some things. What exactly besides just the artifact determines when you're going to turn down the drop rate? You said you want it to feel important. Like, how do you decide when it stops feeling important?
So I don't want any one artifact to drop more than a couple times a day. There's kind of different tiers in terms of the artifact items. There's different tiers of power for those things. There's a lot of these very common things, and then some that are just in there for fun, like a Pax ring or a luck ring or something like that. So those, if they drop like 10 times a day, it's not a big deal, because those are kind of like, yay, but those are also set at pretty low value, pretty low, you know, they don't do that much for you. You can't sell them that much, but they're still cool and still a little bit of fun. But the target I look for is for not, you know, kind of the medium tier artifact stuff. Will be more like 5 a day dropping is fine. And then for the high tier stuff, which would be like, you know, Shield of the Wicked King and Lich Rings and some of these other things, trying to keep those dropping just once or twice a day, if that.
So that specifically right there, like Crown of the Obsidian, a Shield of the Wicked King, if you have a 1 in 1,000 chance for that to drop, how do you, like, specifically attacking the loot math and getting into the technical details, how do you make sure that we don't have some random lucky day where we get 6 of them to drop in a row?
If you got 6 of them drop in a row, that would be awesome. I love it when that happens. Again, as much as some other people hate these pseudo-random number generators, there's actually a bug in the game right now that I am well aware of, and I know exactly what it is, and I've decided not to fix it. And I'm sure there's probably about 200 people out there that know what I'm talking about, which is you get an artifact drop, you've been farming for hours, you get an artifact drop, haven't seen one in hours and hours and hours, and it's actually 2 artifacts on the same creature. But if there was some way I could insert, like occasionally get on a lucky streak and get multiple artifacts in a row, I would love that, as long as it doesn't affect the total daily number. But anyways, just in terms of how we actually do look at things, kind of the numbers that I look at is I have about 20 different lists of items and artifacts and rarity that all range from it's kind of into the exponential math as to the frequency until you get up to the boss level stuff, and then it's like 1 in 100 or 1 in 1,000 per item. But it's really just a long list of here's 50 items that can drop and what the chance is by each one of them, And then there's a bunch of those different type lists of percentage chance, depending on creature type, tier level, those type things that just get, I put those on all the different creatures in the world. I've been updating these constantly. They still need a ton of work. But if people were wondering, the odds roughly for you kill a tier 5 creature, the odds to get any one, like for a Shield of the Wicked King to drop off of a tier 5 creature is an E6, is what I've started calling them. Because when I type in the number, it goes to 1 minus EO6. It's basically 1 to the negative 10th, or to the 1 times 10 to the negative 6th power. It's basically 0.000001, I think.
And if you step up that loop table specifically, if you step up that to a tier 6 or a tier 7, do you see that grow exponentially, or do you see that just grow by a small factor?
If you step up, it grows. It was growing in the last release. The difference between tier 5 and tier 8 was like an order of magnitude, and the difference between tier 8 and tier 10 was an order of magnitude, which is why everybody who was farming artifacts was hanging out in the Rise, because it had all the tier 10 caster types, and they were way, way, way more likely. So this time around, it's kind of, I think it's about 50% different, or it's about 2 to 1 instead of 10 to 1 per jump. So tier 5 to tier 8 is about a 2 to 1 more likely, and then tier 8 to tier 10 is about a 2 to 1 more likely. And then the big jump is once you get up to the boss mobs, where that's really more like 50 times more likely, but it depends on the boss as well.
Okay, cool. So, do you have anything else you want to tell us about loot math?
Just that it's an ongoing process right now. One of the things I know that is least satisfying is when you finally are to the point where you can challenge something like a dragon or troll boss or whatever, demon, whatever type thing you find, but then you kill it and you get 7 gold pieces. There's nothing more depressing than that, and that's the type of stuff that we'll continue working on, because we want to make it rare to get artifacts, even off those guys, but they should have some they should have some, consolation type loot, that's somewhat valuable, rather than just, hey, I killed a dragon and I got 13 gold pieces and a rusty dagger. I know we don't have rusty daggers, but that's kind of the old one that was depressing from the old days.
You can still get rusty daggers.
You can get rusty daggers? Yeah. I honestly, yeah.
You can. They're still there.
All right, I'll make that an artifact for next time around, as a rusty dagger. Does extra damage to armor.
You know what? If you did a rusty dagger that has like a percentage chance to do damage to a player's armor and then a percentage chance to disarm them, that'd be hilarious. So, okay, cool. Well, do you want to move on to our next topic here? Because I think this is the one people are going to go nuttiest about.
Yeah, and just so people know, since I may be stumbling on a lot of these answers, I just saw this list like maybe 30 minutes ago. So a lot of this is from memory. I tried to look up a few of the things just to make sure I was on target for these, but I've not prepared extensively for these. So I'm sure I'll get lots of it wrong, and I got to make sure and not do this because there's a microphone down here. And I keep covering the microphone.
Hey, I'm okay. I'm watching to my side over here because I'm actually farming gold ore while we chat. and I'm ready to show the game if I need to, if you want to talk about something, right? And then I've got the preview of my stream over here, but I've got you up here. So if I do any chicken necking around, that's why.
I'll probably cover combat math as plug. As most people know, plug, we have a telethon coming up on the 9th, I believe.
Woohoo!
I think I've got a 90-minute section on that I'll just be talking about combat stuff and other type things. Because there's a lot of stuff that I can explain, but it'll be better with a whiteboard. And the good streaming room with the whiteboard was taken for meetings today, so I'm just in Richard's office right now. But anyways, on to combat math. So I think there's a lot of people who don't understand the combat math and don't care, which is the type person I love. Then there's a lot of people that understand some of it, but not all of it, and they make up the parts in between, and those are the ones I hate. Then there's a few people who actually understand really how everything works. So
can I pause for just a second?
Sure. You're probably the second type.
To put terms on this. Hi, tech support. Yeah, I went ahead and downloaded this tool to fix my computer, and now I can't get my web browser to work. So whatever you did to my web browser, I would like you to please fix that because you broke my web browser. And this tool that I downloaded is amazing, by the way. So you can't uninstall it. So thank you, and fix my browser.
What's that?
So the definition of what you're talking about in my terms,
Yeah.
you're
Okay,
talking
that was the
about
middle guy.
broken concepts because people don't understand how something works. This is like that reveal, and so because of that reveal, and you're taking away some of the mysticism. If you don't actually want to know exactly what the math is behind combat, maybe mute the stream right now because I'm seeing the list of what he's going to talk about, and it's going to take all the fun mystery about what happens when you hit a skill away. So, okay, go.
So I cut and paste some stuff into a list of things to talk about. I won't be able to get to all of them, and a lot of them won't make sense until I have a whiteboard to diagram this stuff out. So some of this will remain a mystery. But the general rule is this goes for both magic and melee and slightly different. I forget, it's melee. They always correct me on this, right?
Melee's fine with me.
All right. Anyway.
We're gamers.
There's a slight difference between melee and magic in terms of how the numbers roll. But the general idea is that whenever you attack, the computer rolls a 0 to a 100, and it basically steps through a list of here's the things that can apply to this attack, block this attack, stop this attack, or criticals or hit or whatever. And there's an order that's applied to. And the thing that is kind of confusing to a lot of people is if you have a 20% dodge chance and a 10% dex miss chance and a shield block chance and a doing crazy stuff, even though I have my attack chances actually 100%, I may still only have a 20% chance to get a hit on you because of how the different attack math is applied. So when we roll that 0 to 100 number, the first thing that happens is whatever your critical hit chance is, like if you have a 10% critical hit chance, so 0 to 10 will be a critical hit chance, but that the first one is only for a normal hit. So no matter what, that is always the first thing applied. So that is always you always have a chance to hit based on a critical hit chance. So that's important because that means that even if you're fighting something that is like you have no chance to hit this thing whatsoever, you still always have a chance to hit them because you always have that base critical hit chance. But if you get in that first round, that first set, you will not have a critical hit. That's just your crit hit chance for a normal hit. Then after that, like say the person you're attacking has a 10% dodge chance. If you're from 11 to 20, you're going to be dodged by them. If they have 10% block chance, this is the shield block, then you have a 10% chance, 21 to 30 is going to be the block chance. And if it hits in there, then it goes against their shield, which means they actually scored a hit, but the shield takes off damage. I'm trying to remember the exact math on shields, but I think it is the damage a shield will stop is equal to 5 times the damage resistance of the shield, which I think for most shields is about 4 or 5. So 20 or 25 points of damage, maybe 30 points. And then that's also, I think, your strength divided by maybe 5. So if you have 100 strength, you might stop an extra 20 points. So people who are strong with big shields, they want to block. I mean, they're going to stop a lot of damage, even on the order of boss mob magnitude hits. So anyways, that's 21 to 30. Then like if they're also blocking with their shield and they're parrying, the next one up is your parry chance. And then the parry, I forget how much it stops, but it's based on your weapon damage. But there's also a multiplier that's applied to that. That's one of the stats that I think we expose on the weapons now. So that, and this is because we wanted to give smaller weapons benefits, like a parrying dagger type thing. So that's one of the ways we can make weapons feel different, is the amount that it stops and parry can be greater. So a small dagger may actually be a really good parry weapon, which is somewhat true in the real world too.
So I'm gonna pull up a grab of the game right now, and you can
Okay.
actually see me hovering over a weapon, and it shows the parry at the very bottom of that. Now this is a wand, so it only has a 0 to 1, but it shows the
Yeah.
stat you're talking about. So
Okay.
I'm gonna go back to the regular scene now.
So then after the parry, like again, we'll say that was a 10% parry chance. So what are we up to now? Crit, dodge, block, parry. So parry was 31 to 40. They also have a 10% glancing blow chance. This is what you can get from armor. There's also some skills that give it. This one is really important. So glancing blow, for those who are in the know, is what you want if you're fighting big creatures that hit really hard. Also for PvPing, it's really important because glancing blow takes whatever hit they do to you, and they basically get a 1/3 damage hit. So no matter how big you are, how much armor you have, like your damage resistance, that's the amount of damage that armor stops or spell stops. That's never going to stop a big hit. But if you can get a glancing blow, that cuts it in third. That's a much bigger deal. So now what was that, like 41 to 50? And then we'll say they also had a 10% critical chance. We know that because they started off with 0 to 10. So then that's where the critical hit comes in. So if they got a 51 to 60, then they got a critical hit. And then if they got the next one after that is just a normal hit. So in one of those things also people don't realize, when you're fighting skilled people, there really is almost no chance to miss. The chance to miss comes from if you have a high dex, sometimes you can get their chance to miss down. If you're fighting a really high level creatures, your chance to miss can go up. But in a normal, like level 60 person fighting a level 60 creature, the chance to miss is actually pretty close to 0. But there is all these other active defense things that'll happen. So that is when I talk about dodge being important and block being important and parry being important, all those things kind of piling up. That's because when you have those things, it pushes the chance for critical hits and normal hits down, and in the most extreme case of people who are really skilled and constantly spamming their defensive skills in combat, you really can push it to the point so that their options are to, they might hit your shield, they might hit your parry, they might get their critical hit, but they may have little to no chance of just getting a normal hit on you, except in that first critical span. So anyways, again, it really needs a whiteboard to explain the full details of it, but that's kind of the rough numbers for how combat gets hit. But that is why the active defense things and also passive defenses for like dodge, blocking, parry, and glancing hit is so important for defense. And also why critical is so important, because if you have a 20% crit chance, then you have both a 20% chance that you will get a hit no matter what their defense, and you probably will also have a second 20% chance to get a critical, even if they're doing lots and lots of defense.
So there's a huge group of I can do it better type mentalities whenever you release math, and I have absolutely zero experience in programming combat games, so I don't have a desire to argue with you as to why you chose these numbers the way you did. But in a chance to rebuttal your comments here, how many years have you been doing this?
Well, for background, I'm getting close to 50. I won't say when I turned 50, but I'm actually pretty old. And I grew up on pen and paper games. I actually bought my first pen and paper game while living here in Austin. My dad was in the military and we were at the base here. I bought my first pen and paper game directly from this guy named Steve Jackson, who was at a craft store where they made models, like plastic models, which was Wizard and Ogre and Gev and a bunch of those little small half-size games, and then moved straight on into D&D probably around maybe 79, very earliest, like before people always talk about, oh, I had the blue book. It's like, no, this was before that. This was like World of Greyhawk and the old small books. But anyways, I've been an avid pen and paper player, game player. Started computer programming on a TRS-80, which had 4K of memory, not 4 megs, not 4 gigs, 4K. So 4,096 bytes, and you didn't get to use it all. I loaded off tape drive. And I actually was trying to program computer games on that professionally. I was actually teaching this crazy new language called C++ in college because they didn't have professors that knew any of that, and I was around, so I basically spent my time teaching C++, C, and assembly to grad students and playing racquetball a lot. And
It's
then at some
funny.
point,
My C++ teacher was actually a history teacher. He they had nobody that knew how to teach C++, but the college wanted to start offering it, and the requirement was that you had to have a PhD to teach at the university, right? So they found a history teacher, a guy with a PhD in history, who said he could teach it, and he literally went through and he says, "I've never used this book before, but I know what I'm doing, so we'll learn the book together. Let's go."
officially they had to call me a teacher's aide, TA. But I also taught when I was in high school. They added computer programming to the schedule, but they had no one in the high school, of course, who could program. And so I ended up, they had the typing teacher start being the computer programming teacher because, you know, typing and computer programming, those are the same things. But they immediately enlisted me and got me in there to help with the class in high school.
So
So I've been doing programming a long time, but then while I was in college thinking I would be a professional racquetball player, and then after tearing up my knee and then tearing up my knee and then tearing up my knee and then 5 knee surgeries later, I decided that was probably a bad career choice and decided to, and I'd been programming on MUDs for a while, for people who remember what those were. I was a wizard on Dark Mud and Overdrive and a few other MUDs. But I decided I'd get into computer programming, and lucky me, my brother was in computer game programming, and they were desperate for anyone who knew C++. And so I went down to help a company called 360 Interactive, 360 Pacific, with the game Harpoon 2 was the first thing that I joined when they were just about to ship that out. So I think that's pretty close to 25 years. It was floppy days back then, so I've been doing this for quite a while.
So my purpose in asking all that is just a simple before somebody who watches this decides to throw down their 30 seconds on Google search to find a better math algorithm to throw at Shroud of the Avatar, realize that there's a lot of expertise and history and knowledge that goes into why they chose what they chose. And when you think everything's broken, sometimes there's a bug, but it's usually not as bad as what you think it is. I mean, the math here has been rooted in years and years of extensive gaming knowledge. So, yeah, I mean, that was really my biggest purpose in having you list your resume, was to give you a little bit of a come at me, bro.
But that's also, this is to some extent, the math in this is new compared to other video games, but a lot of it is based on some of the similar stuff that WoW did. As many things as we can pick at WoW, one of the things they did do was introduce good practices for very predictable damaging and combat and those type things. We still have a lot of balancing work to do on ours, and we kind of have some because we have a lot of different hands working really fast. This isn't unlike a game like WoW, where they basically worked on it for 7 years, but in a closet, and then they said, "Here it is, everybody." After having it all perfected, as everybody knows, we're working on this right in front of you and release to release to release. As people say, one of the things they love about the project is every month it's a new game. But that's one of those things that frustrates people too. But it is every month you kind of get a new game. And occasionally that means that we are redoing some combat math, changing things up, and players have to build new packages. And sorry for that. But again, every month it's a new release or a new game.
And just to mention before we move on to the next thing, I thought that was really cool how you guys did the Obsidian Book of Unlearning when you guys had the issue with taming. That was for taming, right?
I forget what it was. Also, just a note to people for R40, for those who are frowning because you mentioned taming. For R40, I have a task. I've not touched taming or pet stuff at all. For R40, I have my first task that I'm going to go in and try to make sure taming is both balanced and fun. So if it's not balanced and fun after this next release, after R40, then you can blame me. But I'm hoping to get it to be a little more meaningful and compelling, because right now we all know
throw it out there. If you're fixing taming, You might as well as work on pathing for all creatures. That way my little undead minions get a little bit of a benefit from it. So just gonna throw it out there.
Well, that's a whole nother thing we could talk about. That's one of those crazy, complicated things, especially for an MMO, and then also, unlike a WoW or something like that, like we change a lot of stuff in our scene. We've got a lot of dynamic stuff. Like obviously, if you're in a town, like everything changes every 5 minutes, and creatures trying to figure out how to path is a huge, huge deal. But and now also adding like, hey, elevators and flying blimps and those type things. There's a lot of significant challenges involved with making things path correctly.
That's a good segue. You want to go to the next thing on the list, number 3?
Let's see. Hold on. Let me mention one thing that I wrote down there.
Yep, go for it.
One of those things people have asked about is fizzle stuff. That's another one that comes up occasionally that upsets some people and gets a fair number of changes. But the fizzle, if people look at the trees, one of the things that is often not understood, probably because we do a good job of making a game and a horrible job of communicating what's actually going on behind the scenes. But the fizzle chance, when you look at the magic tree, I'm not wearing the magic tree, I'm wearing combat today. But as you get over towards the death, air, fire side of things, armor, the negative attributes of armor affects the fizzle chance far more. As you get over towards the earth, life, water side of things, it affects it far less. So you can wear heavier armor with those things. But if you actually look at them, there's actually a multiplier for how much armor. So if you have a 10-point chest piece, or like adds 10 to your fizzle, it may add 15 if you're casting death magic or air magic. But anyways, on to the next one.
Yep, I pulled that up on the screen so they could see that. So the left side, this is basically your super fizzle and your unlikely to fizzle type tree. So, and then chaos is chaotic, so we won't even get into that.
And also chaos will be getting some love. I think most people know that it's not finished, and it's kind of been the we want to finish it when we can do it right type thing. So hopefully we're getting close to the point where we can do it right and we can start adding in some more chaos magic, because it is supposed to be the most powerful magic out there. Right now it has a lot of the most annoying magic out there, but not necessarily the most powerful. But we will be getting that cleaned up soon.
Hey, as long as I can cast something that has a chance to one-shot kill me or one-shot kill my target, I'll be happy. If that's how it ends, I'm happy. Let's see here. Usage of Unity assets. So I'm actually going to rename this real quick to just usage of Unity, and then you can talk about whatever you want in there. Okay.
This was one that came up recently because I think somebody saw that we were using a piece of art from the Unity store, and were upset because we were using a free piece of art from the Unity store and then we were selling it. It's one of those things. We're going to do that. There's a bunch of different reasons we do that. We're trying to make the most out of the money you guys are giving us. We're very open with how much money we take in, and also very open about telling people pretty much no one on the team makes a competitive salary, even for the Austin area, forget California area. But we're trying to make a game for as little money as possible and make the most compelling thing. We don't look at how much we paid for something or what the cost was when we put it into our store to sell. The thing you're paying for really is for the exclusivity of the thing. You're paying for how cool it is, how much it adds. But you know, it's not a matter of cost. If we actually base the price of how much we sold stuff for based on how much it cost us, anything we made in-house would cost 10 or 100 or 1,000 times what any purchased asset was. In this case, it was someone who I think one of the artists saw a cool piece of art that was, this looks like it fits the style of her game, but it was for free. So we're not going to, just because it was free in the asset store doesn't mean it's for free.
I'm going to jump in. Page 1 of that thread, you can actually see Duke Avery made a comment that the asset that was brought up was only free for non-commercial use, and Darkstar responded to that comment on page 1 saying, by the way guys, this was not free for us. We had to pay for it. But even if it was free, it wasn't actually free. So I just figured I'd point out that the licensing of the asset in question was free for non-commercial use, and you guys did have to pay for it. But keep going.
Yeah, but I mean, but we try not to look at what things cost, because if we did, you know, anything that we made in-house can cost, like maybe an asset that takes a good a complicated piece of art may take a week. If you're looking at something like a player house, that could take Bob the Builder a full month of work or something like that. We try not to base the price of the thing based on how much it costs us, because obviously paying a skilled, experienced artist for a month of work is going to cost more than anything we buy on any store or any place. We try to ignore that side of things. We try to ignore the cost and just look at it as the value in the game. When we are picking up assets like that, where there's an asset that we see that fits our game, that fits the style that we can get into the game, for us, that is awesome and win, and it's a win for you guys too, because it means we can then spend the time to work on more beautiful art for game-specific stuff, where it's stuff that we can't go and buy things. And also for things like, I'm not sure how many people have been to Kroll. Kroll. Yeah, that started as a joke, by the way. I called it when I designed the Blood Bay area and the maps that were going to go in there, I called it the Kobold Research Lab. And then we always try to, I think Scott or somebody tried to change it to be KRUL or KRL. And then I think Star changed it to be Kroll, because he wanted to be like Kroll the Warrior, for anybody who's old and remembers that old Kroll movie. Where he's got like the 3-bladed thing that he throws, a little, whatever that was. But anyway, so that was yet another joke that kind of turned into an actual name in the game, is that Kroll was actually Kobold Research Lab that they then extended into a name. I forget where I was going with that. Oh, but anyways, so if you've been to that map is almost 100% exclusive custom assets, and we have time to do that even with our small team, because wherever we can, we pick up assets that make sense that somebody else has made. Just because anytime we purchase something, it is a fraction of the cost of us making it in-house. And if it fits, it fits. And if it doesn't, we don't use it, or we adjust it and make something else work. But anyways, we're not doing that to try to like, hey, we're going to rip you guys off. This is so we can spend our time making the assets that we need for the game. This is not like an artist went and bought that and then kicked his feet up for a week because he bought an asset instead of making something himself. And I think the other one, I think I put this in the thread in my reply in there, which I was, as I mentioned, I think I made the post at like 5 a.m. after getting up early and hadn't had my coffee yet, so I was probably grumpy. But this is kind of the equivalent of if you had somebody building a house for you, you wouldn't go look at the guys out there and say, hey, you're using lumber you didn't cut yourself. I feel like I'm being ripped off because you didn't cut the lumber. It's like, these are the tools, or like, you're not using tools you made yourself. For us, that's kind of where Unity comes in. Because we are using Unity, which is the tool we're using to make the game, but it's really the mechanism. I mean, it's the cheapest, fastest iteration engine out there. As much as I rag on Unity occasionally, it is still the best option for what we are trying to do. If we wanted to make a game that had 4 hours of gameplay that was super finely polished and the absolute most cutting graphics, there are probably better choices out there, but we're trying to make a game that involves years of content. I had a player who just asked me recently how many hours he had played, and he had over 200 days played when I looked him up. So you're talking about single players who have more than 4,000 hours of playtime. So if we're trying to make the most polished, most finely graphic tuned game, then there probably were better choices, but because we were trying to make massive amounts of content with a small team, iterate fast, move fast, and also be multi-platform, Unity is the best choice. So as much as I rag on them, Unity is a great engine and a great choice for things.
So I just asked what my playtime was, but as I look down, I see that it is 3:03. How much time more do you have? What? Do you want to cover more topics? It's 2:03 where you are, 3:03 where I am.
Let's see.
Do you want to cover some more stuff here, or do you want to say that we'll save some of the other topics for another show, or how's your day looking?
I can save it for next week if you want to do another stream next week, or anybody else wants to do another stream. Let me look to see if there's anything that I really want to talk about. Let me jump in and just mention on number 6.
Yep.
We've not announced our schedule, but one of the things that is moving to be in the forefront is optimization stuff. We know memory footprint is huge. We actually just got a major issue today that when we changed over to our new asset bundle system, that we somewhere in there with the incremental builds, we split out 2 asset bundles that probably shouldn't have been split out, because the net result was we end up loading the same massive chunk of data twice, once from each one, whereas in the old days they were combined. So we're fixing up some of those things. But I mean, we're looking at that change plus a few other changes could shave close to a gigabyte of memory. Yes, a gigabyte of memory. We're that inefficient. That could shave a gigabyte of memory off of the footprint of upcoming builds. Hopefully that'll be sometime before R40 that we'll be getting that out. But anyways, there's tons and tons and tons of optimization. We know what needs to be done. Things continue to get a little better right now. The one I've been looking at that we may get some fixes in for R39 is the optimization that pretty much when you are in heavy combat with lots of people, there's kind of one of these performance issues that I refer to a lot to the team, but I think other people aren't really aware of, probably haven't thought of, is there's some performance stuff that you have to do per frame. You know, rendering, we got to do it per frame, that type of stuff. You know, that's kind of a consistent, every frame we have to do this thing. There's another type that seems less dangerous, but it's actually more dangerous. That is here's something we have to do per time, time slice. And the reason is more dangerous is because you can get into what I refer to as death spirals, where you have something that happens per time. You know, if it's a per frame thing, that's easy to find, it's easy to see, it's always happening. But if it's per time, what can end up happening is, in this case, it's packets. We're sending crazy number of packets, and you have to respond, your computer has to respond to those packets. Well, that ends up in some combat situations with lots of people with some specific stuff happening, ends up being very, very costly. But what ends up happening is your frame rates start slowing down. But just because your frame rates start slowing down, that doesn't lessen the amount of work that has to be done. Because as each frame gets longer and longer, like longer in terms of milliseconds, the number of packets that you receive during that time and must process during that time actually increases because the frame is longer. If you had a higher frame rate, you get fewer per frame. But when it gets to a certain point, it's like your frame gets longer, so you get more packets. And then guess what? Your frame was longer, so the next frame you get more. You get more packets and your frame gets longer. And the next frame you get more packets and your frame gets longer. So it ends up being this kind of this death spiral until you get kind of down to this base state of like what the actual performance is. And that's what is happening to a lot of the combat stuff when you get into a big group and you have a lot of combat going on, is we're getting a lot of very serious spam in terms of network packets. I know we're going to deal with at least a couple of them for this release, but we will be dealing with most of those in the upcoming releases. We will put out a schedule, and you'll see on a schedule coming up. I don't know when we're releasing it. Star will know. And I don't like to steal his thunder on announcements of stuff, so I won't say too much about it, but just that you'll see that a lot of the tech work is shifting from implementation to optimization. So that is what players have to look forward to, is we will continue to add more features. There's a bunch of stuff we want to get in here coming up, but a lot of our time will be focused on optimization. We really have not had, even when we do a performance release, honestly, it's really a catch-up release. These will actually be, we're not just catching up on the thousands of bugs, but hopefully we'll get caught up on the thousands of bugs and get to the point where we're actually doing performance work, which has really not happened up to this point. But anyways, I guarantee memory footprint will go down and be more consistent. Frame rate will continue to increase, especially for the heavy load scenes. I think somebody mentioned the other day that they went to the Iron Maiden auction, but I had a player reported to me that they were there and the frame rate was horrible, and I was like, was there anything going on? Was there combat? Or he said, no, there were 120 people in the scene, to which I was like, yeah, 120 people in the scene, but we know it gets horrible at that rate, so there's a lot of other stuff to do. We have not done LODs for any of our characters as we continue to do LODs, and LODs are performance graphics device that we can talk about on another show, because we've got we're way past our time already.
So I actually have a couple of comments from chat real quick. Can I read these two to you?
Read? Sure.
I'm not actually really reading it too well, but I am reading it a little bit. So it says NPC combat animation needs a lot of work, far too easy to kite a mob because they come to a stop to do the attack animation. This lets you run away and get several hits with magic ranged. And another comment is, would you ask Chris, when do they plan on upgrading to Unity 5.6, and are they going to be testing the beta internally? Do you, before you want to go, answer either of those, or Do you want to say maybe a future time?
I can give a very clear answer on the Unity side of things.
Okay.
So we are actually on 5.4. One of our goals for R39 was to be on 5.5, but there are crashes in the asset bundle loading system in 5.5. We have, in the past, we have submitted our project to Unity, but it is hard to get them to look at any of this stuff, even though it is very clearly in their code. But a lot of that is because we submit these things, and our project is about 130-ish gigabytes. And if anyone's worked in Unity, you know that the time to import a project is kind of proportional to the size. So it can actually take about a day and a half to import our project. So shocking, they don't want to import our project and look at the bugs there. But anyways, we are continuing to try to work on getting on 5.5 first, then 5.6. 5.6 will include some big performance upgrades, and I think there's actually, I think it's still on the roadmap that it's going to have some of the IL2 CPP stuff, which is compiling C# stuff to native. But I think that may just be for Windows binding stuff, but I've not actually looked at the performance because, again, 5.6 is still in the distant force because we're still trying to get on 5.5 without the game crashing like mad. But hopefully for R40, we're going to be on 5.5. We're still discussing right now. But for those who remember when the game was crashing about every hour or two,
the Clauth physics thing.
That was well, there were multiple things, but that was because we rushed an upgrade. And another thing we found with 5.5 is they did the thing that they're never supposed to do, which is a data format's non-backward compatible. So basically, when we move to 5.5 and move the whole team to 5.5, we can't go back to 5.4. So if we get to on 5.5 and stability is still not there, and we can't figure out how to work around the Unity issues with the crashing on Linux, and that, yeah, we're stuck. And we won't be able to roll back without basically just saying, okay, everybody revert the project back to its state a week ago. So we have to be very cautious about upgrading. If you're on your little home project, it's super easy to upgrade, and then they have like importers and stuff like that. But when you're on a project with 2 million lines of code and I don't even know how many files, like 200, 300,000 files in it, and data formats and build machines, I mean, it's not a trivial thing to upgrade to the new version of Unity. So we're working on it, but until we are 100% confident with the stability, and making sure that we aren't going to screw over like the Linux users and Mac users, we will not be moving. But hopefully soon, because there, again, each one of these updates we can get includes free performance upgrades for all of you guys. I know that just going to 5.5 is supposed to be about a 25% boost in load times, which I'm sure everyone out there would appreciate, even without further work by us.
All right.
Yes, so no 5.6 yet. We're still looking at 5.5 right now. And as soon as we get that to a stable point, we'll be moving.
One of the things I do want to mention is that Chris is not shy. He is, like most of the other developers, willing to talk. He responds to me on the forums, PMs. The official Shroud of the Avatar forums are a great place to go. If you don't have Shroud of the Avatar, go buy it. If you're looking for the best deals possible, make sure you watch the stream next week. It is next week, right? Week and a half, maybe?
Yes.
Week and 2 days. Week and 2 days. So
Thursday or something.
Yeah, it's coming up very soon. They always do really cool, amazing bundles and discounts and things. And if you spend like $5 at the stream, you get all of their unlocked stream awards. So it's a cheap way to get a whole bunch of cool things.
Yep, and always watch it. We're always answering questions on those things. And as Joe was saying, I think I answer all the people who hit me up on Discord. I try to keep my list of questions coming to me clear. Occasionally I may miss some, but just understand I get a lot of people pinging me. The other thing to remember is I'm not Barrick, and I'm not even Star in terms of talking to people, community people. So I sometimes do get pissy with people and tell you to go F yourself or whatever other if people are being rude. So my patience is modest, and occasionally I do offend people. So
it's
understand.
He's the tech lord.
Yeah, engineer type, not community type guy. So I usually will give you very straight answers, and occasionally, yeah, occasional little too straight answers.
So Discord, if you're looking to find him on Discord, shardoftheavatar.com has a community section. Right underneath that it says chat, and the link to Discord is right there. Discord's free to download, and there's a lot of developers that hang out in there. So, anywho, Atos is the most talkable of staff. He is awesome for that. That's a Murray. So,
Murray and I need to have a hug session here.
And he just turned around and said, confirmed. He's told me to go F myself when I deserved it. So anyway, hey guys, thanks for watching, and I'm gonna keep trying to do these regularly if I can. The reality is that the team is trying to divide themselves across a large community, so I can't promise that this is going to be something I can do weekly or bi-weekly, because I don't know what Chris's schedule is going to be like next week. But I will try to keep them numbered, and I will try to keep them cataloged, so anything we go over is really easy to reference. So as you talk to other people, you can say, hey, Tech Doc number 2, you can look for that little subtitle there and go right to that, and he talks about how combat works right there, or he talks about some of the optimization stuff right there. So anyway, thank you, Chris. I really appreciate your time. You want to say anything as a goodbye?
Nope, just
great.
Love being a part of the community. Love talking to everybody. Thanks for all the support, and thanks for all the patience. I think there's a huge difference in what we're doing for making the game that occasionally people don't get, and they get frustrated because things change. But definitely love all the guys that are sticking with it, because it is changing, and love seeing the week-to-week, release-to-release updates. And basically, as I said, they like getting a new game, and anytime, as I mentioned before, the balance side of things, I go and I balance something, and which basically means ruining how they were exploiting things or using some overpowered skill. They always come right back and find a new way to the new overpowered thing. So, but anyways, thanks to everybody for being so patient with the game development, and we look forward to exciting news in the not too distant future, which I guess probably will be next week. So,
great, sounds good. See you guys.
Great talking to you.